Hi, Mike Jacobi here, inviting you to join us again for Jazz Tonight as we kick off the 2015 season. This year, the Summer of Sinatra, dedicated to old Blue Eyes, celebrating his 100th birthday. Each week, we'll be bringing you a new artist that's appearing in town, look behind the scenes and find out what they've got going on in the recording studio and find out what else is going on live in their lives. Jazz Tonight, right here on KCAT.
Captain's Log, Day of Discovery. Today, our junior crew members declared their independence. While the young cadets explored uncharted territory, the Admiral and I discovered the Fountain of Youth. Later, we were treated to a royal banquet. And after a brief skirmish with pirates, we celebrated with cannon fire.
Disney Cruise Line. When it comes to pleasing everyone, the difference is Disney.
Hi, I'm Mike Jacobi, executive producer of Jazz on the Plazz, a production of Los Gatos Music and Arts and host of Raising the Standards on KSCO Radio in Santa Cruz. Delighted to have you join us for Jazz Tonight. We are halfway through our Summer of Sinatra and continue with some of the great jazz players in the world coming to Los Gatos. This week is no different. An old buddy of mine I've known for 25 years, one of the great layback musicians. As you can see, Giacamo Gates. Hey, baby.
How are you? Thanks for moving. I
Are we done?
Yeah, we're out of here. Giacamo Gates is an old buddy, a master of vocalese, which we're going to talk about the meaning of which in a few moments. But let me open with the question, why jazz?
Well, why not? No, to be serious, which is a kind of a difficult thing to do. It was a music that influenced me from a very early age, and it lets originally whoever was playing jazz, you heard their personality, as opposed to a bunch of notes, they're matching a bunch of lyrics or vice versa. I liked the fact that everything was distinguishable. When you heard somebody's voice, whether it was through a tenor saxophone or a piano, you knew who it was.
Well, where'd you grow up?
Connecticut.
Connecticut. And was there music in the house when you were growing up? Your folks?
My father was a violinist, although not a professional. He had a day slave, we like to say. But he played very well. He played classical and he played like gypsy violin. Mm-hmm. But he used to listen to classical music on the phonograph. Yeah. And I also remember hearing like Cab Calloway and Duke Ellington and Count Basie and Fletcher Henderson. Yeah.
Well, you remember Roosevelt. You remember Roosevelt's fireside chats, I know. But
but you know what? You just made me think of something. It's not really of my generation or yours. Yeah. But we're all about the same. But the early cartoons, the 1930s cartoons, I don't know if they still play it like on cable television, but when I was a kid in the 50s, they played the old black and white cartoons.
With classical music?
No, the music was Duke Ellington.
Well, they did classical originally. Was it Mellotones or I can't think of the name of the cartoons, but you're right. And then they brought in very, very hip stuff.
High-end jazz.
And there were characters, talking about Sinatra, there were characters they would bring into the cartoons and make them part and parcel of it, whether it's Sinatra, Crosby, Duke Ellington and stuff.
Right. So I think that had something to do with it.
You know, next year's theme here at Jazz and Plazz is going to be Duke Ellington. And I was telling someone about it, and I was reminded of the marvelous story of Ellington is doing an interview with a BBC reporter. And the interviewer says, "Your people must be very proud of you." And Ellington said, "My people? You mean Merlot drinkers?" So we're looking forward to that. So your mom play an instrument?
No.
Okay.
No.
So
played the radio.
Played the radio. So did you do the obligatory piano lessons?
No, but I did take guitar lessons from the ages of 8 to about 15.
Did you have a choice? Did he want you to play the violin?
No, I wanted to play the guitar, and they let me do it. I think I had eyes for a saxophone at first, but my father said no wind instruments.
No wind. There you go.
Don't know why.
Are you sure you weren't holding the violin the wrong way? It was a guitar.
Maybe.
Okay.
Actually, the violin was like, "Don't you ever touch that. Don't ever touch that."
Are you a good guitar player?
I didn't think so. I mean, I could play the blues and I could read, but I couldn't play in my head on the guitar.
Okay.
You know, I couldn't transfer it. So, and I think I took lessons till I was about 15 years old. And then when I hit my late teens, I started playing with guys who were in their middle 20s.
Yeah.
And we started playing for weddings.
Okay.
And when you played for weddings when I was 19, you played the Great American Songbook.
Sure.
So I got hip to all of that music as a kid, while my friends were listening to, you know, the Doors. I mean, I listened to the Doors and I listened to Marvin Gaye and James Brown and the Beatles. I wasn't much of a Beatle fan, but I mean, I listened to the music of my generation, but I also got very fortunate to hear all that great music. And I used to get hollered at by them because I'd be reading the changes and I'd be distracted by the lyrics,
Yeah.
and I'd lose my place.
So
Pay attention.
So while all the guys have their garage bands, you know, and doing the Doors, you're doing Bucky Pizzarelli somewhere at a wedding.
Well, I was at least trying to play the chord changes to, you know, Cole Porter and George and Ira Gershwin and Harold Arlen and Rodgers and Hart, and that made me aware of a whole other end of music.
And at what point did you let go of the frets and start singing?
You know, I would sometimes sing along with it, and then I think I sang as a kid,
Okay.
but I never pursued it. I mean, I never even pursued music as a guitarist. I just did it because I liked it, and I hit about my early 20s, and I dropped out of college, started working construction. Occasionally I'd pick up a guitar and play some blues, maybe even a chromatic harmonica. I learned how to play the chromatic a little bit, I taught myself. And I never really let it go. I was always a fan of the music. I'm still a fan of the music. But I wasn't pursuing music until, what, 39 years old?
Yeah.
A couple of years ago.
Well, there's a great American songbook of jazz. Of course, from Illinois Jacquet and the great writers of the 30s and 40s and up until date, Durow and folks. The nice thing, and I would think the marvelous thing about that is you can bring your own personality to it. So that you're really not trapped. I mean, the Great American Songbook, by and large, although you'll find differences, they're pretty much set with arrangements.
Yeah, in a way. I mean,
Some people fool it a little bit, but overall.
yeah, I mean, well, I come from the school of to state the real melody,
Yeah.
and then wherever it may take you to let it, not let's change the melody for the sake of changing the
Right.
melody. I don't go there.
Yeah. But when did you start writing lyrics?
Maybe
I mean, did you do poetry as a kid?
yeah, a little bit. I think I wrote a couple of like blues songs when I was actually still working construction,
Yeah.
just for fun,
Yeah.
you know. And then I think when I started to do this, I got really influenced by people like John Hendricks and Eddie Jefferson
Okay.
and Johnny Mercer, and I just thought, gee, it'd be nice to and finding out that some of these great jazz standards didn't have lyrics.
Well, that's what I'm saying is that there's a treasure of these great standards, unlike obviously the Great American Songbook where the lyrics come with it. That my God, it was begging for. It's like Moody's Blues, you know, and Thelonious writing things over.
Right.
You and a great story, an example of which. Tell the story about you writing lyrics and how it came about to Take Five.
Oh. Well, we might have to get serious.
Really?
Take Five was probably one of the first jazz records, Time Out, that I was aware of. I played guitar, I listened to Time Out, and I realized I had no idea what they were doing. Didn't know where the one was. I was a student, and then I started to figure it out.
Now explain that concept.
Well, most songs are written in 4/4 time, and the whole thing about Time Out, it was written in 5/8, 6/8, 12, 11, different time signatures, which had a lot to do with classical music. So I heard Take Five, I just, you know, I liked it. Time goes by. I wrote lyrics to Paul Desmond's solo on Take Five.
Now had there been lyrics to Take Five prior to that?
To the melody,
Yeah,
by
to the
Iola
melody.
Brubeck, that
Okay,
by Dave's
by
wife.
his wife, right,
Right.
okay.
Now, Paul Desmond wrote Take Five.
Right.
The Dave Brubeck Quartet made it famous. I only wrote lyrics to it. One of the things about Paul Desmond is he was very lyrical, very melodic, easy to sing his solos, easier than perhaps, I don't know, John Coltrane. So I wrote some lyrics to it and sent them to Dave Brubeck. This was 25 years ago. And I just wanted him to know I was on the planet. And I got a letter back from Dave Brubeck, which knocked me out. Mm-hmm. And he said, I like the lyrics. I listened to your lyrics on your cassette that you sent me, cassette. And you should send them to the Desmond Publishing Company. I believe they were in Sacramento, California, along with my letter. So he was kind of endorsing things which I was knocked out about.
Because Dave didn't own that. Dave didn't own the Desmond.
No, it was Desmond's Publishing Company.
Now, was Desmond still alive at the time?
No.
Okay.
No. So I send it to them. I get a letter back from them saying, solid, we like it. But if you want permission to record it, you have to get a hold of the Desmond Publishing Company attorney, who's in New York. They gave me his name. And I call him up. I tell him the backup story. And I send it to him. And he says, well, at the time, Take 5 has been recorded vocally once by Al Jarreau and once by Carmel McRae. I think that's enough.
Really?
And that was the end of that.
Yeah.
So then my very first recording, which was produced by Helen Keane, who, I won't go too deep, but she was
Helen Keane is legendary.
legendary female producer who I became connected with through Grover Sales,
Right.
a Northern California cat who I was honored to be hooked up with.
And folks that know jazz, Helen Keane was also produced for Bill Evans.
And she produced the Tony Bennett, Bill Evans
Right,
album,
which-
Carol Sloan, Mel Torme, and on and on and on.
Really,
Many
yeah.
people. Instrumentalists, Johnny Griffin.
And this timing being everything, she takes you under her wing.
She dug what I did. She says, I'll produce your record. And she heard me sing Take 5, and she said, let's do that too. And I said, well, there might be an issue.
Yeah.
And Helen Keane was a very, very powerful woman in the music business, and she called this gentleman, or I don't even want to call him that, but she called this attorney up.
Which is
Yeah.
the opposite. Yeah.
Right. And he said the same thing. Well, I don't know if I like the lyrics. No, he said,
You're an attorney.
no, he said, I don't, it was recorded twice vocally. And she said, but this is a lyric to Desmond Solo.
Yeah.
This is a nod in honor of Paul Desmond. He said, well, I don't know if I like the words. She said, what do you know about lyrics? You're an attorney. End of the negotiation.
Yeah.
So I couldn't record it. 25 years go by. I have an album coming out July 24th on High Note Records, my third release with them. And I mentioned this whole story to them, and they said, we have history with this attorney. We've worked with him, we've worked for him, he's worked for us. We'll call him up.
Let me interrupt you. July 24th, as in a couple of days.
Yes.
From when we're taping this and when
Yes.
you're here at Jazz. Okay, go ahead.
So he finally gets a hold of this guy who's reluctant to get back at hello to the music business. And he says the same thing
25 years later.
25 years later. I don't know if the guy he even understood what he was asking
Yeah.
them, okay? But some people have the power to say no. And because I can't hurt them.
Yeah.
I can't hurt them. There's no way I can hurt them. So I said, okay, and I recorded Take 5 without my lyric to Desmond Solo, which is a big loss to Paul Desmond's memory, because it talks about how it all came about. Okay. So the record will come out with Take 5 on it, minus my solo, but they can't stop me from singing
Which
it
you
live.
do in person.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. And sadly, to kind of wrap up, as I was talking about timing, Helen passed away.
Yeah, shortly after the record came out.
Yeah,
You know,
this is years ago.
91, 92.
You and I met in the early 90s. I was at KRML and in Carmel, and you were down there doing a gig at the Jazz Store. And you worked on the pipeline for a while. You rolled cigars for, no, that's the other pipeline.
That was another one.
So, okay, let's fast forward. So you're in your 20s. You're working construction. You go do the pipeline. At what point? I mean, you're sitting around dancing with the polar bear singing, and I mean.
I went up there for a year.
But at what point are you say to yourself,
12
I'm
years
gonna do
later, I'm
something?
still up there because I
Right.
dug it. And in between, I was in
And
Washington.
goofy money's my guess too up there, right?
That had something to do with it.
Yeah.
You know? But you had to work 70 hours a week.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You know, and it wasn't like, well, we'll take a coffee break
Yeah.
at 10.
Yeah.
No,
You'll
no,
take
no.
a coffee break in February.
Yeah.
The jazz scene up there was obviously pretty quiet.
Yeah.
So, at
I
what
got
point
involved-
at the end of this do you decide to start to go on
Well,
your
like
own?
I said, I went up there for a year, but I was still up there 12 years later. And in between, I was in Washington State on a road job. I was in Arizona for a season. I worked in Lake Charles, Louisiana on a drill rig. And I'd return to Alaska. And I was getting time. It was getting time for me to do something different.
Sure.
I felt it coming. And then I met Grover Sales at the Summer Arts Festival up there.
But had you performed as a vocalist? Prior to that?
You know, sitting in somewhere, sitting in Washington, sitting in somewhere. And then I got involved in this festival as a participant in a workshop, and he heard me sing, and a couple of other people said, hey, you know. Actually, Grover said to me, where are you from? I said, I live right here in Fairbanks. He said, that's not what I asked. Where are you from? I said, well, I'm from Connecticut. He said, yeah, whereabouts? I said, well, about 60 miles from New York City. He said, that's what I thought. Hip guy.
Yeah, yeah.
So he said, you know, he kind of encouraged me. I got encouragement from some other people. I stayed up there another 6 months. I went back to New York and started to try to make some noise.
Hold that thought. We're talking with our friend Giacamo Gates, who by the time you see this show will have wowed the audience as he has in the past here at Jazz on the Plazz. We'll take a quick break and be right back here on Jazz Tonight. Hi, Michael Jacobi here, executive producer of Jazz on the Plazz, a production of Los Gatos Music and Arts. You know, people often ask me how can they help support us, and in doing so, help keep jazz alive. Well, a couple of ways. One, you could get a corporation and give us $500,000. Now, it was worth a shot. Or two, you could buy some reserved seats. You buy some of the merchandise. And this year, with our tribute to Frank Sinatra, there's some wonderful Fedora logoed wine glasses along with shirts. And best of all, you could either check out the gala with the 4 freshmen or buy a jazz card. Now, the jazz card is just $100, a mere C note, and there's $700 worth of value on it. All right, you give me 1 minute and these glasses, and I'll tell you exactly what you get. All right, start the clock. Go to Willow Street. It's good for 1 free pizza and a side salad. Go to Main Street Burgers. Good for a free burger, fries, and soda. Nothing But Cakes. Good for buntinis. Go to Verge, the new restaurant at the Toll House, and get a free breakfast entree. Los Gatos Roasting Company. Free breakfast crepe and a large coffee. You can even get a horseback riding lesson at Bright Ranch in San Martin. Go to Rootstock, a sampler appetizer plate. At Skin Spirit, the new folks in town, it's good for 1 skin rejuvenating chemical peel. Jazz on the Plazz, a couple of VIP entries. Billy's Boston Chowder House, good for a free Boston Cioppino lunch. Classic Car Wash, a classic car wash. What else? Arthur Murray, 1 free dance lesson. Centonove, good for a free tiramisu. The Cats, a half a rack of ribs with a side. Chin Chin, free truffle fries. Gardino's, good for a free appetizer. And finally, Testarossa Winery, it gets you 2 passes for wine tasting and a couple of invites to an artesian wine cheese experience. $700 for just a $100 investment. Now it's your chance to help keep jazz alive and help the good folks at Los Gatos Music and Arts keep on keeping on. Come on. Welcome back to Jazz Tonight. We're talking with Giacamo Gates, who has performed, is performing, will perform, depending on when you watch this, at Jazz on the Plazz, 2015, our Summer of Sinatra. Sinatra fan growing up?
Oh, yeah.
Was Sinatra a jazz singer? You're going to say it's a complicated question, I know.
It's a complicated question. You know, he sang with the best jazz musicians, but then again, so did Sting.
Yeah.
You know. But I think Sinatra was probably one of the great, not probably, certainly one of the great interpreters. And that's, to me, what a lot of jazz is all about. It's not just the tempo or the scat singing.
Yeah.
It's about personally interpreting a melody and a lyric. And he's pretty good at that.
Yeah. There are so many definitions of the phrase jazz singer. I mean, because I will mention people to you, and you will immediately say, "That's not a jazz singer." I mean, and rightfully so. If you were to define it, as you say, you just point out what it's not. But what is a jazz singer other than being able to interpret a song?
Well, it could be a lot of things. I mean, Billie Holiday was a great jazz singer.
Okay.
She didn't scat.
No.
She wasn't like a scat singing improviser, but she would change the melody. But it wasn't about thinking about changing the melody. It's because what I'm thinking about when I'm singing Summertime makes me sing what I sing. If I'm singing Summertime, I'm not thinking about skiing in Vermont in February,
Okay.
or I better not be.
Is it the musical
The choices?
version of method acting?
No, I don't think so.
So it's that.
I don't think so.
Would you, Anita O'Day? I'm just going to move on because that was such a dumb question.
No, it's
so I'm
fun.
moving on. But
he's got a sense of humor. He's got a great sense of humor. A lot of people don't get it.
unfortunately, one of them's here with me. Anita O'Day, who
Great
did
jazz singer.
all those things
Great jazz singer.
and was a great jazz singer.
Great jazz singer. The epitome of a female jazz singer. Betty Carter.
Yeah.
Karma McRae. Now, I'm mentioning people that most people know.
Sure.
But, you know, Jimmy Scott.
Yeah.
Great jazz singer. Chet Baker.
Chet Baker,
Scott's great jazz singer. But when I hear Chet Baker play the trumpet, when he takes his horn out of his mouth, you hear the same sound, you hear the same approach. So what you hear is his personality. So the same instrument is played by Louis Armstrong.
I was just going to say, would you say that about Louis as well?
Yes, because
Okay.
you hear him.
Okay.
You don't just hear a trumpet, you hear him.
Okay, well, you're describing, it's like the phrase jazz singer, the word vocalese is subject to a myriad of definitions. But, and the out, you know, it's like Eddie Jefferson, John Hendricks, like that's the answer. And as I said yesterday, 20 years people are going to be going Giacamo Gates. And, you know, and I mean that. But if that isn't enough to make someone understand, what is vocalese?
Vocalese was named by Ralph Gleason, the jazz
Okay,
critic.
Right.
And it's supposed to be, what it represents is usually a horn solo, a spontaneous improvisation over chord changes of a melody, of another melody that's already written, and then the singer or lyricist listens to that solo, learns the solo and all the little nuances in it, and then puts lyrics to it, and usually the lyrics coincide with the title of the original melody. Like you said, Moody's Mood for Love.
Right.
It came from I'm in the Mood for Love.
Right. Okay.
So Eddie Jefferson was the guy who put lyrics to Moody's Mood for Love, and he sang them at a party, and King Pleasure got a hold of him, and he was the first one to record it. And then it went from Dave Lambert and John Hendricks and Annie Ross, and it extended that way.
Does doing vocalese, I don't assume, I guess it doesn't require, but do you need to write the lyrics yourself?
No, I mean, I sing their lyrics. I've written...
But there need to be different lyrics written. You don't just pick up a tune that you're gonna do a different verse of it that doesn't exist
Right,
lyrically.
it's a complete, it's
Because
another...
you do a lot of Miles.
Well, I
that,
did a Miles Davis record, so
right,
I
yeah, of course,
did a lot
yeah,
of
okay.
Miles.
But, well, the difference being you did a Gil Scott-Heron where the
No
lyrics
vocalese.
existed.
No
but-
vocalese, right.
That was just straight ahead. But the thing like 4 that you did, which was a Miles tune, which the story is Miles stole it, didn't he?
Well,
He borrowed it. Yeah, then I just borrowed it. I'll bring it back. So, tell me a little bit about 4.
Well, for one thing, to write lyrics to anything that Miles Davis played, I'm not saying it's easy, but Miles Davis was a lyrical player. He sang a song when he played the trumpet. There was a story coming out. He had something to say. So Miles Davis's 4, the original lyric to the melody written by John Hendricks, then John wrote lyrics to 2 choruses of Miles' solo, then he wrote lyrics to a chorus of Horace Silver's solo, the piano player on the recording, the original recording. And that's the essence of 4, the lyrical version by John Hendricks. And a quick story, John wrote several tunes. John wrote several sets of lyrics to different Miles' tunes. And Miles and John knew each other. And they had a relationship. And John told me one time that he was sitting down in a diner in New York City, in a deli, 2 o'clock in the morning after a gig, and he's eating across from somebody. And Miles Davis comes in and sits down next to him and moves him over, pushes him out of the way and starts eating his food. And John says, Miles, what are you doing? I'm going to change the vernacular, but he says to him, you mess with my music, I'm messing with your food.
Did you ever see Miles?
Yes.
In which
In the
era?
70s.
Which era?
In the
Bebop or?
in the early 70s, when he was still wearing black mohair suits with a white shirt, no tie, he still had short hair, and the music was just starting to change. He was playing both, but it was getting more modern.
Miles, like Coltrane, when he needed money, he'd go ahead and record a straight-ahead ballad album, make some money, and then go back to what he wanted to do.
And after a while, it turned around, too.
Yeah.
And then he said to Miles, Miles, how come you don't play those beautiful ballads anymore? He said, because I love them too much.
Yeah, that's heavy.
That's
That's
deep.
heavy. Coltrane, did you ever see it?
No.
That would have been something.
Miles told him a little story too. He says, John, you're playing these 45-minute solos and people are walking out.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Coltrane says, well, I keep getting more ideas, man. And, I play a chorus and I get another idea and I don't like what I played. I want to play something else. I don't know how to stop. Miles says, just take the horn out your mouth.
That begs the question, and I've talked to so many musicians that say, well, if people don't get it, screw 'em. Is there a point when the musician isn't getting it anymore? Is it always the fault of the audience?
No, I don't think so. But me personally, I don't play to the lowest common denominator. Okay. On the other
Although
hand,
you don't play to the
I don't play
most
to-
discriminating jazz fan either.
well,
Or
I try to do both.
Yeah, right.
I try to give them, I try to be accessible. I try to challenge them. They're listening. I'd like to give them something to go, wow, that was different. I'd like to hear more of that. Or that was different, I don't know if I like it, but at least I heard something different. But I want to have them have a good time. Because when we're done and it's over, if they look at each other and go, gee, that was great, what happened? That's not for me.
Well, and it's a very fine line. If, as a musician or a producer, and I put us in leagues different, by the way, from a talent standpoint, but the only way to keep jazz alive is to kill it. What's the sense?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's a bunch of, I can't.
But on the other
On
hand,
the other hand, there are 5 fingers.
as Bleeding Gums Malone says on The Simpsons, 90 jazz fans can't be wrong. So there is an area in that where you've got to bring people. I mean, Bradford's a buddy of mine, and he and I have had a lot of discussions on this. He says, how come you don't play my music on your show? I go, well, it's called raising the standards. And he goes, I'm not doing it. I said, well, I'm not playing it. But there's somewhere in between where you still got to grab somebody. If they're not there at the end of the day, there's no conversion.
Then you lose them.
That's right.
Yeah. Now,
But there's not an unending pool of audience
that's right, too.
because it's got to be passed down.
Now-
I mean, my son's in the studio. He loves jazz because he learned jazz and was around it. But if you don't have that,
Right. And I never met Branford. I certainly know who the cat is. There are some albums that he has done that he takes great American standards.
yeah.
But, the guy is knowledgeable. He's a good player. But he'll go somewhere where maybe the average listener doesn't know how to follow.
Yeah.
So, me personally, I think it becomes work for the listener. You don't want to, if you enjoy I think I'm getting my ears tweaked here. This is interesting. But if you make it too difficult, then why would anybody want, then nobody wants to work on it. They want to have a good time.
Classic example is the medley you do of, is it Blue Skies and In Like Bud?
In Walk Bud, yeah.
In Walked Bud. So, that's a good example, is that people go, I know that tune, I know
Yeah.
that tune, I don't know this tune, and
Yeah.
now I know that tune.
Yeah.
But it's a great
way
but it's
to-
kind of like, come on, we're going to take you along slowly, and then we're going
Yeah.
to take off.
Lady
And that's
Be
the joy.
Good, Lady Be Good and Disappointed.
Right. And that's, and Los Gatos, admittedly, is not an easy gig for a jazz player. You have been able to do it. This is your 5th or 6th time here, and people, really appreciate it. you're bringing something new, and you know, it's kind of in a good way holding their feet to the fire and saying, this is the culture, this is our country, this is what we brought. Now dig it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, maybe part of that is, I mean, I don't think about trying to do that, but I have been fortunate enough to be teaching at Wesleyan University. This will
You
be
do a
15th
great
year.
deal of teaching of vocal leaders and
Well,
music.
what I really do is, I mean, I'm not trying to get a bunch of jazz singers on the planet. I mean, if they want to learn about the music, great. But what usually happens is, let me give, I don't know how much time
We
we
give
have.
you
It's
about 3 or 4
short.
minutes,
Just
go
a
ahead.
short example of it. So students come in and I say, well, why did you take this class? And if they're honest, they say, well, I thought it'd be an easy credit. I don't know much about jazz. I thought I'd like to find out. I thought it was cool. I don't know if I can even sing. Great. Who do you know? Well, Ella Fitzgerald and Frank Sinatra. Those are the two that they all know. Everybody knows that. How about Frank Sinatra? What do you know that he sings? Well, he sings My Way in New York, New York. Great. Okay. I want you to listen to this. And I play Frank Sinatra and Count Basie Orchestra, 1962, Pennies from Heaven.
Right.
And they go, wow, what's that? It's Frank Sinatra and Count Basie. And they go, wow, I like that. Then maybe have them play Chet Baker. And they hear Chet Baker and they go, wow, he doesn't have like a big voice, but he draws you right in. Well, all you got to do is expose people to this. It's not hard to like.
Yeah.
That's the thing. People think jazz is esoteric. It's for junkies. It's for hipsters.
And all that being true, it's still,
It's for dancers.
it is for dancers. And,
But
you know,
the
it's-
real deal is it's very accessible.
And broccoli never sounded so good. Take a chance.
Do you have
Have
2
a
pounds
bite.
of broccoli?
You have a little broccoli? Everything's a metaphor. Hey, quickly, folks want to find out more about you. They want to order. Can they order your stuff online?
They can go to Amazon.com and get the newest recording. Is called Everything is Cool. It's fun. It's swinging. It's retro. It's modern. There's music from Babs Gonzalez, Elvis Costello, Thelonious Monk, Paul Desmond, Oscar Brown Jr., something by myself and John Eaton.
So they can order that online.
At Amazon.com, they can go to my website, GiacomoGates.com. They can call you, give them
They
your number.
Call me for $15. I'll sign it myself. I'll sign it Lester Young. It'll be worth something.
Crazy. Joe DiMaggio is what I put on there.
Giacomo Gates, it's always a joy.
Crazy.
Have to see you every 6 years, whether I need to or not. Thanks for watching Jazz on Plazz tonight. Next week, we're going to chat with the 4 freshmen, which will be fun.
They
And
never graduate.
it's not the original 4
never
freshmen.
graduated.
People keep asking. I said, no, they're 110. The 4 sophomores, they're off. They never made it. They never cut the deal. And in the weeks to come, Bria Skomberg. Do you know this young woman? The trumpet player?
I know of her. I don't know
Really
her.
excited about hearing her. So there's a whole lot more to come. We've got half a season left, and we're delighted that you're a part of it. Until next time, I'm Jacobi. I'll see you soon.